Hi there, it's Michael Mirdad here. We're going to share one of our spiritual insights with Michael Mirdad. Today we're going to talk about, based on this comment that came in, we're going to talk about the possibility of having a spiritual life and yet a human life. Having spirit, God, spirit, spirituality, spiritual path versus the human life day to day. Like filming something like this and having a plane go overhead. It's quiet until you start filming, right? It's a good metaphor of things in life. You'd like things to be just sweet and harmonious, and all too often it's not that way. You have feelings, you have experiences. It could be anything. You could be wanting to watch your favorite spiritually profound show on TV, and instead it's replaced by some boxing match where people are pummeling each other. It seems so contrary. You could want to watch, something that's going to feed your soul, and it doesn't happen that way. You could want to watch a program that we're doing here, like we do a Sunday. We have our Sunday sacred services. Remember, you can join us there. And you go to watch it, and sometimes the technologies are down, the internet or whatever. So these things happen, but there's also more and more breadth of that. There's more and more examples of how that can infect and affect our life. When we let things infect us, then they affect us. And infecting us is sort of like saying they sneak in under the radar, like an infection. It sneaks in under the radar, whether it's a virus or whatever it happens to be. It's kind of just using a metaphor that these things, someone's comment becomes like a virus, and it just starts acting funky the way a flu virus could behave in our body. And so this person was asking, in a sense, I'm just paraphrasing, I think they were asking something like, is it possible to have, in a sense, the spiritual life and yet a material life? And there are some very simple, profound, but necessary ways that we can explore that conversation, such as, can I have a life of dedication and integrity? A lot of people that get on the spiritual path, they start getting very excited about, yes, my spiritual path, yes, integrity and soulmate, no more garbage relationships, so soulmates only, and I want my spiritual path, I want my soul's purpose instead of job, career, pressure, So we all try to run away from that other world, the one of pressure and the one of stuff, especially when we're introduced to either to the spiritual path or new aspects of the spiritual path. We really start to get very, treat it very precious, like, wow, I want this. And so it becomes like a food to the soul, and we're like, wow. And it's true, even A Course in Miracles tells us that all that I just described in the positive sense is sort of like they're all metaphors or parallels to your Christ self, the Christ child within. And the Christ child within, A Course in Miracles is saying, sort of has to be treated like a baby and protected and brought into maturity so until it can stand for itself. But at early stages, even though the Christ child, in a sense, you could say the Christ is already light, pure light, in a material world, it needs to be protected. Another way to say it is nurtured. But it also is true that it literally needs our protection, energetically, emotionally. Now, I'm not trying to make our Christ self into a victim or into something that's weak. But in this world, if we want to see the Christ self, the God self, maturing and processing through typical day-to-day events, then yes, we sort of have to guard it. Now, here's another way to say that. You have a profound meditation this morning. You wake up just in the zone, and then you slam a finger in the door, just pain. Someone calls that you didn't hope, you weren't hoping that would call, and it really goes south on you, and misunderstandings or a traffic ticket or whatever, these things can really tempt us to hurt. Sometimes it'll hurt us because it's the same old, no matter how spiritual I try to be, something goes wrong. That's my being frustrated at an old pattern. Another way it goes wrong, so to speak, is you're really doing something spiritual, and it's not the old pattern of it going wrong all the time. Instead, you're really just focused on wanting, just the high. Wow, I'm just like the high, my meditation, everything's just kind of going, you know, centered, blissful, wonderfully. And then something kind of steers it off and it breaks our heart because we were feeling so high. So we crash. The best thing to do is to somehow practice integrating the spiritual experience you have. Whether it was a good meditation, whether it's a good week you're having, whether it's a great month of Course in Miracle lessons, or whether it's things are just kind of locking in. They're just like your job, your soul's purpose, things are soulmates, everything's just really kind of going well. It's really hard to handle it when it kind of goes south. But if we integrate the good, if we integrate, in other words, instead of this is something many of us can make the mistake of doing. It's like, wow, I'm feeling great. Why? Ask yourself, why? Because I met that person and they're just wonderful. I made it about outside of myself, you see. Or because that new job and I'm going to get a raise. It's still about outside. I'm not saying you shouldn't have those thoughts at all. I'm just saying watch, because the more likely, the more I am putting this energy on something outside. Someone is making me happy. My new job is making me happy. I moved to a beautiful place. Look at it. Wow, wow, wow. The more I make it about the things of the world, the more the ego has, you could say, permission or contract to pull the rug out from under us. And the higher you go, the harder you're going to fall. Now, we all do this. I mean, it's, if you win the lottery, it's not like you're going to go, I am just going to maintain my center. I'm not going to get too excited because then something will go wrong, which is negative thinking. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just to be aware that when they do crash, you might want to ask yourself, are there any signs here? Are there any things I can learn from or look at that could take me a different direction and teach me where have I invested too much in the outside? Because if I'm crashing, it's almost always going to be that somehow I was invested in something. Overly invested even. If I run a couple of workbook lessons together from A Course in Miracles, it would be saying something like, there is no love but God's, and therefore there's nothing in this world that has any value. And therefore I need nothing of this world, and I want nothing of this world. Because God's is the only life. There is no life but God's. There is no love but God's. There is no joy but God's. There is no anything but God's. Meaning that only God is real. The good news is that that God that is real is also within us. So that means there's a real life within. That one cannot crash. It cannot crash. But if we make that inner life, that spiritual, powerful, beautiful thing, God's love, God's joy, peace, and all that, if we take even a godlike experience, and then we accidentally ground it into material things, the ego is hoping for that because it wants you to shift your attention, your focus, and your gratitude onto something material, thus ruining our true connection that gave us the light in the first place. Love in the first place, happiness today, lottery today, or whatever you want to call it. It's going to become objectified, meaning on an object of this world, instead of spiritualized. The tricky part then is, can I have all the good things in this material world? Yes. Does that mean you're just like ready to go? That's it. It'll be bliss from now on? No. Again, all the greatest teachers' teachings have explained you got to be in this world and not of this world, but they also explain that you're in this world, you're going to have challenges. In this world, there will always be suffering, Jesus said. Buddha said, life is suffering. The world is suffering, a place of suffering. It's like these guys do not come across as wonderful motivational speakers, right? They would have never been acceptable and accepted in some of the big, like Hay House publishers or whatever, some of these places that want to just have really positive thinking kinds of things and so on, teachers or spiritual centers. Buddha, Jesus, they would have never been acceptable even in most spiritual centers, new thought centers, yoga centers. They wouldn't have accepted him because they would have walked in and still said the same thing. The world is suffering. Nothing of this world means anything. This world has no value because it isn't even real. And, that kind of spoils it for everybody because nobody knows how to live under those guidelines. It's really hard to live under those guidelines. So even Jesus and Buddha would have been booted out, Maybe that's where he got his name, Buddha, booted out. So, it's like that. The truth hurts. But the truth does not mean that we cannot have something. It's just to not get invested. Somewhere along the line, I did a talk, and I don't know if it's a free talk on YouTube or if it's one of the talks on a DVD set that we have. But I did a talk along the lines of the difference between attachment, non-attachment, and so on, because there's a confusion around this, to be attached and to be, non-attached. The difference between these, because there's a level of detachment, which is too extreme, attachment, which is too extreme, non-attached is in the center. It's like, it's neither. I'm just in my center. I see that I have temptations to be attached. In fact, sometimes I am attached, and I'll see through it and work through it the best I can. Sometimes I'm going to be extreme and go the other way and go, I shouldn't have had any attachments, and try to detach from everything, like a cold attempt at preserving or protecting ourselves. Too extreme, because what it implies is something is bad and I have to guard myself from it. Sometimes that'll feel like what you need to do, but it's still not the ultimate goal. The unattached, the center, is always going to be the goal. That's going to be in my talks anyway. So there's a beautiful, blissful center that we find. So in this world, to be in the world, not of the world, to be able to see things of beauty, trees and birds and people, love, events, feelings, children, animals, all the things of beauty. But essentially, as soon as you think, that is my reason for being alive, I live for rainbows and sunsets and so on, you're wrong. You're actually mistaken. Those things aren't even real, and you're giving them value. Do I mean don't even look at them? No. Instead, look at them and say wonderful things like, wow, look at that sunset, those colors. Go ahead and soak it in. All I'm asking is that you add, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of the beauty within myself. The beauty that God and I share. That's all. It's all I'm adding. Just recognize that all things beautiful are rooted within, and all things not so beautiful are rooted within. They're all going to come back to us one way or the other. Whether you like them or hate them, they're going to come back to us and our lessons. Our lessons to take something seemingly negative, absorb what we can learn from it, see what we can learn from it, whether it's to release a hurt or whether it's an insight. Learn from it, let go of the experience, and absorb only the value. You could say, like anything in life, like nature recycling. It's going to take and recycle all it can from something that's died, a leaf even. It's going to recycle what it can, absorb, and anything other can just blow away. Whether it's even a seed drops to the ground, the plant will grow out, the seed falls away, and the plant can take off. Once it cracks open, the seed can take off. And it's the same with us. Our soul, we drop our body and we move on. When a person says they leave their body, they die, and they're attached to their body or their physical life where they lived in a body. Do you know, guys, those are called, souls that are attached. They're troubled, ghostly kinds of people, souls that are wandering the earth and not moving on. Does that sound at all healthy, welcoming, inviting? I hope not. But that's what we're doing when we have attachments. And when some beings, some souls that wander around this world and wonder what they can do because they won't move on. They can't. I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I'm missing something. I want to be in this world. I love this world too much. I'm attached to this world, or whatever it is. Some of those beings even get kind of up close and get what's called attached into our etheric field or aura. And those are called attachments. They can be thought attachments, they can be beings, but they're not healthy. It's not like you get to heaven because you go, look, I finally moved on and went to the gates of heaven, or when I passed over, I went on the other side and said, I'm going to expect to be able to go to heaven now because I'm carrying so many attachments and beings and entities, and you think that's how you get in. No. You have to be clean of all such attachments, whether they're entities or whatever, or thoughts or desires. Buddha explained that we come and incarnate because of desire, and it was always misinterpreted to be, and I mean, even Buddhists often misunderstand this or misinterpret it to mean rid yourself of desires, just detachment. And Buddhism is often confused with detachment, and it is not detachment. It's a term that's used, but it's incorrect. But it does mean that when he says desire brings you back, he's talking about attachments, physical, emotional, psychological, psychic, any form of grief, unhealed wounds are going to be forms of attachments because they're on your mind. They're obsessions, slightly obsessions or major obsessions. Addictions, slightly or major. There's still things that need resolved until there's nothing left that creates a Velcro-ish experience for me in the earth plane. And some of us get it and complete that. Some of us get it and rid ourselves of that. And we still come back because some of us choose to help others get it. So back to the main point, which is all congruent with everything I'm just sharing here, but a moment ago, but can we have the spiritual life? Yes. And the material life? Yes, at the same time. Can you be totally spiritual? Well, yeah, if you're spirit and you're an ascended master, then you have a spiritual experience. That's great. Can you be totally material? Yes. Materialistic people. That's just dandy too. Fine. Do what you want to do. But the conversation is, can you have both? And I'm going to say, you will have both. You will never become even an ascended master truly until you have found peace and balance with both the material world and the spiritual world. There are beings that have not incarnated, and they're purely spirit. That does exist. So you can be that, but that wouldn't apply to us because we incarnated. Angels and most angels and all that. And some humans are just stuck materially, and that's all they think about. But we will never transcend the physical world until we become balanced. You don't do it by detachment. You do it by recognition of the truth of God. And you say, wow, and that's done right here in the tissue. Isn't this ironic? I'm going to know the truth of God and respect the illusion. So it's a day-to-day process of, here I am, pure spirit, one with all. This entire world and the entire universe in which this earth plane, this earth world planet is floating around. And it's imperceptible as a tiny dot within the universe, this planet. And then you zero in on one little place, body, and one chair. We're just looking so insignificant if you think about it. But all of that is actually just one little dot within our mind. We collectively are the Christ, the creation of God, and we are in the mind of God. We're, it's not that we're separate, but we use the metaphor of imagine the consciousness, not a body, but a consciousness of God. And it's beyond imagination, if you want to give it a size. It's a consciousness that's beyond vast. And in that consciousness, we're sitting. And we, made in God's image, are like a childlike version of the same thing. We're like an offspring of, like the baby of. And we have all the same traits. So God has us in its mind, and in our mind, we have the same things: love, peace, happiness, joy. But we also added another thought. It wasn't a real thought, but it was a fabrication, a wondering what life would be like outside of love. And then the whole universe exploded. It's a little much, but I talk about that in other talks. But the whole universe exploded, and we then flew into it and landed and became little souls, and then in little bodies, thinking we're nothing. But the truth is, we're behind this whole creation. And until we recognize our part in all, our value in all this, our role in all of this, we can never really be empowered. You can sit and pretend to be empowered. You can even read little affirmations. You have cards. I am fully empowered. You can say it. You can wear t-shirts that say it. But it isn't true unless you realize, to some degree or another, I really am behind all of this. Everything I see is a part of me, reflecting a part of my consciousness. The birds chirping in the background, and the ones that have fallen from the trees dead. No, I don't want to be part of that. I'm only part of the birds chirping. Everything. You and I have co-created stars being born and stars dying. We've co-created addictions and spiritual insights. Our job is to say, to not get attached to any of it and to not try to be detached. Because if we try to be detached, it means there's a something that we're trying to lose ownership of, and you can't. If you lose ownership, you can only pretend to. You never really can lose your power and ownership. So if you want your power back, you have to have ownership. And ownership means of both, positives and negatives, of everything you see. It is a part of us. Nothing I see in this world, the world I see, means nothing and has no value. And again, workbook lesson from A Course in Miracles. Has no value because it isn't real. It's not no value because I'm trying to fight it off, fend it off. No, it's not real. But my job is to find peace. Be in the world and not of the world. How can I find peace? Well, mostly through forgiveness. Mostly, I don't mean just forgiving people you have a struggle with. Forgiving, like when you see a dead bird and you, oh, that's terrible. Oh, it's probably the pesticides they spray, and on and on and on. That's not actually true nor healthy. What we're going to be asked to do is the recognition. Wow, so sad that bird, dead. Gosh, I wish it hadn't died. I feel bad for it. You go through all those normal human things, perhaps. And then, but isn't this interesting? Because life and death, incarnations, reincarnations, happy, sad, ups, downs, these are all in my mind. So I don't need to forgive the person who made the stuff that might have killed the bird. Do that if you'd like. I mean, that can't hurt. But at the end of the day, I have to take ownership before I learn to have my power. Because if ever I want to create a power that says there will not be animals that die, and the lion will lie with the lamb, as we hear about in the Bible, in an inevitable outcome of life, one day that'll happen. But for me to get to that, I have to first own my power. And for me to own my power, I have to take ownership of the other things that I've created so that I can reverse them by forgiving them. So I say, there's the bird. I feel bad about that. I wish people wouldn't do this and that. I wish another bird hadn't killed it or whatever killed it. I'm angry at. I forgive the birds that killed it. I forgive the animals that killed it. I forgive the cat that caught it and killed it. I forgive the people that, created the pesticides that got into the bugs that the bird ate and then died from, I forgive all of that. But I also take ownership and forgive myself for believing that I'm separate from God and that I need to see any reflections of that to teach me. Like the bird being dead. It's a reflection of death, which is a reflection of lifelessness, which is a reflection of godlessness, and I was mistaken. And then I forgive myself. And when I do that, I start to realize that, over time, maybe the first time I do it, it'll work, maybe the 100th time, but over time, I start to feel more and more waves of reality and connectedness. Because what starts to happen when you practice 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, you become better at math. And to say, at least at addition. And when I practice recognizing the truth, like that bird symbolizes something, and I forgive those people, and then I forgive myself, and then I realize, and God is but love, and therefore so am I. When I start to realize that, I get better at it. It starts to become my reality. And I start to more and more not feel attached, nor the need to detach. More and more I start to feel the truth of God and the connectedness of all things. So in a wonderfully roundabout way, I'm coming back to the main point. Can we have a spiritual life and a material life? Yes, but let's really humanize this. What happens then when you have really, really seemingly unspiritual people in your life? It's the same as the dead bird. They're dead spiritually, seemingly anyway. And I feel bad for the people that tormented them. And I need to forgive those people that tormented them into becoming unspiritual people. Then I need to forgive those unspiritual people that are just kind of rude and obnoxious, to put it bluntly. But then I need to recognize, and they symbolize my belief in separation from God, from love. And I need to forgive myself as well. The more I practice this, then the less often I jump into the judgments in the first place. The belief that these people are obnoxious. Now, this is giving you the spiritual solution. It doesn't mean you're supposed to stay there and just pound your head into a wall thinking, I'm not spiritual enough because these people still annoy me. Sometimes, guys, leave. Sometimes walk away, because even Spirit, who wants you to forgive everyone eventually, encourages you to get the right space to be able to do it. Sometimes it's easier to forgive someone in your own little apartment where you can barely afford furniture than to be in a wonderful, prosperous relationship where somebody's wealthy and you have cars and so on, and yet you're miserable. Sometimes the most important thing is your spirituality. So what can I do to feed my spirituality and be faithful to it today? Can I be spiritual and have a family? Yes. And kids, yes. But it's all easy to do at first for many of us. But man, eventually your partner starts getting annoyed because of your spirituality, right? That's a drag. Your kids start getting into addictions. That's a bit of an inconvenience on your spiritual life and path. And it's going to happen, one form or another. If it's not your family or kids, if you haven't had them, work or your health, your body, you could be real spiritual. And you not even have had children, so therefore no addictions, or you had them and they didn't have addictions. And you have a supportive partner, or don't have one at all, that's fine. And you just feel great, and you have your soul's purpose, everything's just peachy. And then, wait till you hit menopause. Wow, rude awakenings. Wait till you reach an age where bones become more brittle. All spiritual. I start every day, Om Mani Padme Hum. And, eventually your chant changes from Om Mani Padme Hum to, I can't believe I can't get up. I'm in my lotus position and one day I can't get up. I can't believe this. How did this happen? I'm all spiritual. I should be able to chant my bones into health, and so forth. And it's all that happened is, the song, Your Day Will Come, that kind of thing. It's like that. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Things will, even if they have to wait a while, they're going to try. Something's going to come up to test you, to test me, to test us, all of us. We're all going to go through those things inevitably. And it's like the ego's just, I will get my chance. I'm going to get you eventually. I'm going to work you, man. I see that you're being all positive, but I'm going to either hit you today or tomorrow. I'm going to hit you with something. I'm watching to see what you're attached to, and that includes what you're proud of, because pride cometh before a fall. So if you're all proud about how, your spirituality did this for you, and you don't have any issues, and you are wealthy, great. But something's going to happen, because our job, our most important job, and really the only function on this planet, is to wake up. And the primary way to wake up is through forgiveness, the way I described forgiveness a moment ago. And for you to practice forgiveness would mean that there are going to be some things to forgive and people to forgive. So the annoyances are part of the plan, you could say. They're not God's original intention for us, but since we created these things, God's like, well, let's make it into something constructive, called forgiveness and then awakening. As far as God's concerned, it never intended us to go to sleep in the first place, but we made free will, used free will to go into a sleep state of fear and anxieties and troubles, things to learn from and things to wake up from. So, I would say, guys, you can have devotion, you can have integrity. Be careful not to become so spiritual that it starts to become a prideful spiritual, because this is back to that original question, to where it becomes a prideful spiritual, to where you go to somebody like Michael, you call me for counseling or advice or feedback, and you say, but I'm spiritual. What do I do about the non-spiritual people? Which, you're right, I get what you're saying. You're accurate in one sense. And you say, I just want to have integrity, and my business partners don't have integrity, or my partner doesn't have love, they're too judgmental, or, I get it. You have people in your life or events in your life that contrast your intentions and your spirituality. I get that. Can you have those kinds of people in your life and still be spiritual. Yes, that's why. That's how you become even more spiritual, is working through things like that. But still, it is annoying, and sometimes you have to draw the line and say, I'm not going to do this. This business venture with this person, it's just not working. We kind of split two different directions. Never hate them. Try not to judge them. Try to affirm that in them there's the same light as you have in your, holier than thou sometimes thoughts or behaviors. But really on a humanistic level, I'm trying to get to that too. I do feel for you, and I understand it. It is a major struggle. You'll have friends that don't seem to share the same beliefs. You'll have a partner sometimes that won't share, business partners, jobs that they simply don't resonate. Most of us, spiritual people included, the highest spiritual people, but most of us on this planet, if not all, go through that, guys. I know it's a contrast, and I know it's annoying, and I know it's hard to deal with, but it is a fact of life. You're not here to be blissed out. Like Yogananda taught, this is not my home. He said, tell yourself that when things go wrong. This is not my home. That's why things are going funky. So understand that. And we think, well, but I want it to be a wonderful life. I don't want, what you're really trying to do is avoid your spiritual practice by getting caught up in everything going well for you. Then that's trying to make this world into perfection that it isn't. It has no ability to be perfect. So you have to accept that. And people did die, and your heart did get broken, and you were betrayed, and so on, and you have died, and you have had losses, and you've had moments that you thought were great, and they passed away and faded eventually. You could have the most wonderful, wonderful soulmate partnership that the world has ever seen, and you're still going to die, or they're going to die, and you're going to feel loss and sadness. You could be wealthy, win the lottery, you're still going to die, because this world crucifies you and tries to make you lose hope. Our job is not to get a perception that our life is better because things go better. We're supposed to have a perception or a reality, so to speak, that my life is okay no matter what seems to be happening, because my life is an inner life. It's not the outer life. It's an inner life. So I'm going to pursue that as my focus. When things go well on the outside, don't get too haughty about them. Don't get too proud about them. Give thanks because they came from your healthy choices. When they're not going well, give thanks that you can learn from them and turn them into something constructive, forgiveness, or whatever it happens to, a lesson, whatever it happens to be. Turn everything around to your advantage and keep going. And when you're really struggling, reach out for some other support. Let people pray with you. Let people talk with you and talk you down, so to speak. Talk you down meaning from the ledge, and into sanity. Back to a little bit of like, okay, a reality check. I mean, this is for all of us to understand, we have to bring a new self to the world. We have to bring a new, you're struggling today. Let's say it's about prosperity. You were told you're going to get a new job, and you got all excited about it, and it fell through. God, I was affirming, I was praying, and I was doing my prayer wheel and treasure map, and lighting candles and doing all these rituals to have a new life, a new prosperity, and it opened up, and then they gave it to somebody else. Heartbreaking, man. It's frustrating. But I still go back to what I said a while ago. I probably still want to check in and see. The only way I can crash is if I overly inflate it and rose in an inappropriate way. I'm not saying it's wrong for you to be happy. I'm saying you got to watch if you might have gotten a little bit attached to the vibe, the feeling, attached to, see, my reading did work. Now I'm spiritual. See, my candle lighting, it worked. You're still being outer oriented, and the lesson is, no, you didn't get it. It's you. It's you. Your consciousness is changing. Only be grateful on that, not the candles and the external things. Be grateful that you're changing. Okay, fine. I'm going to focus on changing. I'm glad that I'm different and I'm more prosperous. I didn't get the job. Now I'm still crashing. But I was focusing on consciousness. No, you were focusing on attaching that you're getting the job proved that you were more spiritual. Somehow you're supposed to just know that anyway. Just know that rise or shine, rise and shine or crash in darkness. It's okay. Whether the sun rises or sets, I'm still okay. It's an almost impossible level of consciousness to maintain. But we have each other to remind ourselves through those dark moments. And most importantly, call on Christ. Call on God. Call on angels. Call on beings of light to help lift you and support you. But remember, if you bring them a victim that needs supported, it's a little harder for them to help you because they cannot support victim consciousness. You can start off in victim. You can say, bloody hell, man, I'm hurting. And you can say all that. And they're hearing you and they're supporting you. But they're not going to enable for you and try to get revenge on somebody for you or something. Make you, they're not going to love your ex any more than you or any less than you, just because the ex might win out in a divorce settlement. They're not saying, oh, can you believe this, and hating the person. They're just simply going to say, how can we help for everyone to experience the most love possible? Now, you would understand that angels would want to do that, right? So my teaching is that we're supposed to become more like angels, not call them angels more, to become more like them. Inevitably. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. So start acting like them. Love the same way they love. You still have human struggles. Bring those struggles to the altar of your heart every day and surrender them. Let them be lifted and transmuted, transformed. I would just say, in a sort of a closing few thoughts, hopefully this is all really clear and is grounding for you. Because again, part of what I'm saying is not just the philosophical, but the heartfelt. The heartfelt, oh my God, the frustration of dealing with day-to-day life. I got on the spiritual path, everything was going great, and then someone passed away. How could this happen? Why did this happen? Why did a spiritual mother or dad or uncle, why did my spiritual friend pass away? They were so loving, they were so... You're being tested, and they're being tested. The graveyards are not filled with bad people, just dead people. It doesn't discern. Death does not discern. If you're good, you don't die or whatever. It doesn't work that way. Tests of this realm come to everybody that lives in this realm. I just want to be done with tests. Then don't be in this realm. Okay, how do I get out of here? Oh yeah, some people are going to think escapism, whether it's suicide or whether it's trying to go up and live up in a cave away from everybody. Doesn't work. It does not work. Escapism and detachment, they do not work. So how do I maintain bliss? How do I have what A Course in Miracles says is a happy dream? It's still a dream, but it is where you are entitled to a happy dream. It is inevitable that the nightmare of life is going to turn into a wonderful dream, still a dream. And then the wonderful dream will eventually surrender itself to oneness with God. So we all are moving in that direction. So as I'm closing, I just want to add that it's not just the philosophical detachment, non-attachment, attachment concepts, or the idea of life is full of tests and lessons and so on. I'm also trying to get across this. And I have to save this for last because otherwise everybody goes, I want the good stuff, which I'm talking about now. You are entitled to a happy dream. And the more you practice love and forgiveness, the more you practice maintaining your center, the more you practice not getting attached to things outside being the cause of your highs and lows, then more and more center is found. And the more we're in our center, the more we are able to co-create with God. The only good life you can have, the only good stuff you can have, has to be co-created with God. Anything that comes from our little self is not only going to be more likely gone sooner than it would have been otherwise if we co-created it with God, but it also, if we're creating it with our little self, it puts a negative karmic feeling to it. In other words, you don't get to maintain not only the item, but you don't get to maintain as long the feelings of love around the item. In other words, the peace. Instead of peace, there's I have to protect it, I have to keep it, I have to, hold on to it. So instead, to have things peacefully, what I do is I find myself, the more I receive anything, I give some of it away. Tithing, for example, is a good way to demonstrate that. That's partly what tithing is about. So I look at it and think, just keep giving. it's a good way to. Now, some people went overboard and went detachment and keep giving everything away and not having anything of beauty or value, but they're going overboard to either be afraid and make sure they're detached by giving it all away, or they're trying to earn God's favor by giving everything away constantly. And that's kind of the old way of some of the mystics of old that took things too seriously. So instead, that's too extreme. There's also the people that consumptuous and they own and they grab and they possess everything. Look, I'm prosperous. Big spiritual New Age authors that are prosperous. They have glasses that cost them 10 grand, all diamond studded, and they have the finest suits and whatever. And they say, we deserve prosperity, and we do. We do. We can have a happy dream. But attachments and detachments, it's really such a beautiful center, a sweet spot in the middle where we go, okay, I'm going to allow myself a nicer car. And you have that. Then, a rock gets thrown up on it, from a car that's driving by, and the wheel pops a rock, off the pavement and onto your car, and it scratches it, and you feel that, oh, my new car. Now you'll know it was not co-created from God because there was some attachment to a perfect paint job or whatever. So, I got a car a few years back, and I think it was maybe the first time that I ever owned a brand new car. And, had payments like anybody else and all that, but first time I think I ever had a brand new car. And I think within months I was in a parking lot, and I was real slow maneuvering, but this car backed up out of its parking spot, this young gal, and she backed into the front of the car. And it didn't damage anything other than the more decorative kind of things in front, like the fender or whatever, the bumper or something. And, got out and looked, and she was just so beside herself. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, And in my mind, now mind you, my action, I can exchange insurance, I can sue her, I can do all the things that humans do. I can also just ignore it. What you do is not going to determine whether you're centered in God. Just like having to do a divorce. You don't say divorce is pro-God or against God. Nothing is of God per se in this world. It's the spirit in it that is of God. If I were to sue this girl or even just do the just thing of getting her insurance to pay for the fixing the car, that's fine. But it's the spirit with which you do it. Are you doing it with a certain vindictiveness? Are you frustrated about your car getting scratched? Even without vindictiveness, are you charged about this? Are you heartbroken? Oh, my car, it'll never be the same. Even if they polish it and paint it and fix it up, I'll know that, that's obsessive, man, and it's attachment. But it also doesn't mean you let everybody bump your car and ruin your car and oh, I'm just spiritual, I mustn't do anything. Because I know lots of spiritual people in divorces who said, I just gave them everything because I'm spiritual. And then they're broke, and heartbroken. That's not it. It's do everything with God. So what I did in this case was, I think in terms of the greater good. I also was aware, like I'm sitting there like, wow, isn't this funny? It's a good test. Loved having a new car and whatever. And this person, is all upset but they're just mirroring things and tests for me, lessons for me. So I just went, okay, no problem. It's okay. It's just a little scratch or whatever, a little dent or whatever the heck it was. And they were, oh no, really? I said, it's okay. For me, Michael, not for you. For me, Michael, on that given day, I felt really, really happy as an effect. And that also tells us whether we're doing the right things and whether we're in our right place. I felt really good about relieving this person of the fear that she was having in that moment. I felt really good about that. That told me something. Also, there was the lesson of, in case I had any attachment to this, how are you doing, Michael? How are you with this? New car, let's test it. And it's a test drive, so to speak. And I felt good. It's like, oh well. And so, inside and out, up and down, front to back, left to right, looking at it from all angles, it was fine. It was fine to say let it go. On another day, it might have been better to do a different thing. That's for me, though. You might have needed to do the exact opposite, meaning to take some action, but not ever to hate. So please don't think that there's a spiritual action and a non-spiritual action, a spiritual relationship and a non-spiritual relationship, a spiritual conversation and a non-spiritual. It's what you're doing because you can be firm in a conversation and be centered. You can also be very calm and quiet and be centered. You can be firm and totally out of your mind and in your ego, and you can be calm and quiet and still be in your ego. It's not the external action or thing or whatever of this world. Birds are not innocent and cats are evil just because the cat killed the bird. It's not like that. All these things are reflecting our consciousness. So if you're all messed up in your head about the poor bird, that's something for you to learn. And the same goes, because something might attack and hurt the cat too. So you stay out of all that. I'm not. I absolutely, if I saw a critter trying to kill another critter, I would have to ask, what would I do in this moment? And you can say, oh, it's nature. It's nature that's reflecting a hurtful, hateful, carnivorous, egotistic-based consciousness. So does that mean you keep that animal from killing another animal because it could starve itself? I'm not telling you to do either one. I'm saying you need to look at your consciousness when you see these events. And if I'm in my right mind, in my centered self, I could lovingly, gently, authentically, spiritually stop one animal from killing another, one human from harming another, and be able to be in my center. I could also witness such a thing in nature, just the same as a tree falling off, the limb falling off a tree. It's the same as an animal falling to its death. Our job is to be centered around it, not detached, not attached, but centered. So please get the spirit of what I'm saying in all this. It's the spirit with which you think, the spirit with which you do things, the spirit, the intention behind it. And if you make as spiritual as possible your intentions and your integrities and so forth behind things, that's the greatest goal. The spiritual life will not come from you snipping away, exercising all things that you don't like out of your life. They're going to be there. And if you get rid of one, something's going to replace it to test you again. Because that's this world. The only immunity is to not be of this world. And I don't mean flying away somewhere, out of this world. I'm saying we have to actually heal our consciousness and transform our consciousness and our relationship with this world. Then the world will change. So hang in there when you have challenging people. Remember, I have a talk too on how to deal with challenging people. But hang in there with these things. Hang in with the challenging events, jobs, and whatever. Do your best to bring transformation to those things. And when it just can't happen, when being spiritual pushes buttons too much, maybe you need to step back so that you don't overly trigger people. I'm not saying that it's to run away from people being triggered, because sometimes your goodness is going to trigger people. That's their thing. I'm not saying avoid being in your truth. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying when you use your truth to beat people up and it triggers them, that's not healthy. You're going overboard and you're being self-inflated. So I would just say do your best. Do your best to bring the light where you can bring it. I too would love to only have wonderful, spiritual, loving surrounding. All of us feel that way. But I just do my best to handle it when it's not that way. And people that know me well, I think people have known me best. Somebody can say they know me, and they might not. And same with you. But the people that really do know me, not the ones that think they know me, the ones that really do know me, boy, there's a certain thing about me that they would see that most people would not know. And it would be how even when challenging situations are happening, how I do my best to, hold center. And, it could be something totally going funky. And there's moments when I get frustrated like anybody, but in some of the most challenging situations, it's surprising. People, feel quite surprised that I can forgive, I can hold center, I can do my best to bring peace to situations that you just think, I thought for sure Michael would not be okay with this situation and would, rise up and put somebody in their place and be firm, and instead he's being gentle, or vice versa sometimes. They think I'm going to do one and it's another, because I'm grateful that I dedicate my life to doing what I feel guided to do instead of compelled humanly to do. And it really does make a difference. So that's my advice to you in all things. All right? I know it's difficult. I do know that it's difficult to lose a loved one, to lose a job, to lose anything. I know. And I myself go through these challenges where something seems like it's going to go just really click and be smooth. And then challenging things happen. I've met wonderful people buying a home, and meet a realtor, and you go, wow, the realtor's in the zone, and they happen to be spiritual. And they in my case, I could say, they happen to have a book of mine in their car. Wow, what a great synchronicity! And you think all things are going to line up, and then something just strange happens. I had a realtor once get just completely frustrated because I was asking them to take care of certain things, do certain things in the contract a certain way. And they were like, no, I don't like that. I don't believe in that. And I said, well, but it is doable. It is allowed. It is normal. But they just personally didn't agree with it. And they wanted to push me into doing it their way. And they got ticked off. And, they were a student and all that. They disappeared from my life. Never heard from them again, because that's a tantrum, because they wanted me to do things their way. And it's not going to always happen. I still will be true to what I believe is right, and so on, and you should do the same. And not everybody will dig that. So if you lose some things, or some things go south, especially when they feel like they were going so beautifully and perfect, the synchronicity of this realtor, getting in place and putting in an offer and it being accepted, everything just so perfect and smooth, and then to see it go south, it does sometimes break my heart, and because it was so nice to have a friend who misheard you and misinterpreted something you said, turn their back on you. It's such an unnecessary thing, because we want things to go really beautifully, and when they are going beautifully, those are the hard, if it's already going terribly, that's fine, but when they're going beautifully and then they turn, my attitude is like, oh my God, did you not see how well things were going, and we had such a beautiful thing going, and then you let something inaccurate throw you off, or something you assume to throw you off, or something that you just let throw you off, whoever the person is. It's such a bummer, because the world has so much garbage. We don't need to contribute to it. So when something that seems to be so wonderful goes so poorly, it's for me anyway, it's a little bit of an extra test, an extra challenge, because of all the reasons I just shared. And it's like, wow, I mean, it's just a challenging thing. But we're not in our true home. This is a place that was created out of belief in separation, so it reflects separation constantly in life, love, relations, business, and so on. So please, just do your best to be the presence of God everywhere you are, and just only do your best. When you slip and can't get it today, just forgive yourself and recognize all the angels are with you, going, it's okay, patting your head, and it's okay. We understand that was a tough one for you. Yes, it was, and you can wish it didn't happen. That doesn't change it. So just do your best to find center again as soon as you can. All right? God bless you all, and thank you for listening and spending some time on this program.